In the mid-1980s, Los Angeles was a city obsessed with youth. Big hair, mall culture, and valley slang defined a generation. But behind all that glamour and teenage excitement, darker stories sometimes hid in plain sight. One of them began as a simple case of high school drama and ended with one of the most haunting teen murders in California history. This is the true story of Michelle "Missy" Avila, a bright, popular 17-year-old girl whose murder revealed a chilling truth. Sometimes the people you trust the most can become the ones who destroy you. Michelle Yvette Avila was born in Los Angeles in February 1968. She grew up in the San Fernando Valley, the only daughter in a tight-knit working-class family. Her mother, Irene Avila, described her as sweet, funny, and full of life. Missy was close to her two brothers, and she loved spending time at the beach, listening to music, and hanging out with her friends. By the time she reached San Fernando High School, Missy had become the kind of girl everyone noticed: long brown hair, a bright smile, and a personality that drew people in. But in the sometimes cruel world of teenage popularity, admiration often turned to jealousy. Among Missy's closest friends were Karen Severson and Laura Doyle. They'd known each other since childhood. The three girls were inseparable, going to parties, talking for hours on the phone, and confiding in one another about crushes, secrets, and plans for the future. But as they grew older, small cracks began to appear in the friendship. According to classmates, rumors started spreading that Missy flirted with boys other girls liked. Some accused her of being too friendly. Karen and Laura were said to have confronted her more than once, warning her to stop talking to certain guys. Still, Missy often forgave them. She didn't think the drama was serious. After all, they were friends. On the afternoon of October 1st, 1985, Missy left her home, telling her mom she was going out with friends. She wore jeans, a sweater, and sneakers, casual and comfortable. Irene reminded her not to stay out too late. Missy smiled and said she wouldn't. That was the last time her mother ever saw her alive. When Missy didn't come home that night, her family began calling around. Her friends claimed they hadn't seen her after the afternoon. By the next morning, panic set in. Irene filed a missing person report and started searching through every park and hangout she could think of. Days passed without answers. Then, on October 4th, 1985, two hikers in the Colby Canyon area of the Angeles National Forest made a grim discovery. Floating face down in a shallow creek was the body of a young woman. Her long brown hair had been cut off and was drifting nearby in the water. When deputies arrived, they confirmed what Irene feared most. It was her daughter, Michelle. The autopsy revealed she had been beaten, drowned, and left in the creek with a heavy log placed across her body to hold her down. There were no signs of SA or robbery. Everything about the scene screamed personal. This was rage, not random violence. Detectives began interviewing Missy's friends, including Karen Severson and Laura Doyle. Both girls told police a similar story. They'd picked up Missy earlier that afternoon, driven around, and dropped her off at a park to meet some boys. They said they never saw her again. Their grief seemed real. They cried at her funeral, stood beside Irene, and even helped distribute flyers asking for tips. For nearly 3 years, the case went cold. There were no witnesses, no confessions, and no physical evidence linking anyone to the crime. Life went on. The two girls who had last seen Missy alive stayed in touch with her family, even visiting her grave. To Irene, they seemed like daughters she never had, young women mourning their best friend. But in 1988, a tip changed everything. Another former friend of the girls came forward and told police something she'd been holding onto for years. She said Karen Severson had bragged about killing Missy, describing details that only the killer could have known. Investigators reopened the case, and soon the story that had been buried under lies began to unravel. When detectives re-interviewed Severson and Doyle, inconsistencies started to surface. Witnesses remembered seeing the three girls together at Colby Canyon the day Missy vanished, and when police compared the old statements to new ones, it was clear the two had been covering for each other. By the end of that year, both Karen Severson and Laura Doyle were arrested and charged with murder. What they confessed, and what came out in court, shocked Los Angeles. On that October afternoon, the girls had picked up Missy under the pretense of talking things out, to clear the air about rumors and fights over boys. They drove her up to a secluded turnout in Colby Canyon, a place they'd been before. What began as a confrontation quickly turned violent. Prosecutors said they taunted her, shouted insults, and attacked her physically. When Missy tried to defend herself, they overpowered her. In the end, they pushed her into the shallow creek, held her face down, and placed a heavy log across her back to keep her submerged until she stopped moving. Then they left her there and drove home. The horror of it wasn't just the brutality, it was the betrayal. These weren't strangers. They were girls she'd shared secrets and childhood memories with. During the 1990 trial, both women were found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. Prosecutors described the killing as driven by envy and resentment. One of them told the jury, "This was not a crime of passion. It was a crime of jealousy." For Missy's mother, the trial was agony. She had to sit just a few feet from the same girls who had once slept over at her house, now accused of murdering her only daughter. When the verdict was read, Irene wept quietly. Justice had finally come, but it brought little comfort. She later said, "They were supposed to be her friends." That's what makes it so hard to understand. In prison, both women served long sentences. Karen Severson spent over 20 years behind bars before being paroled in December 2011. Laura Doyle served slightly longer, gaining parole in December 2012. At least one of them served time at Valley State Prison for Women in Chowchilla, not just at CIW in Corona, as often reported. After her release, Karen Severson caused outrage when she began promoting a memoir about the case, a book she claimed was meant to help prevent bullying. The Avila family saw it differently. They viewed it as an attempt to profit from murder. Irene Avila fought to block Severson from earning any money from her story, sparking public debate over son of Sam laws, which prevent criminals from profiting off their crimes. Even decades later, the pain never really went away. Irene kept her daughter's memory alive through interviews and school talks, warning teenagers about the dangers of jealousy, bullying, and toxic friendships. She worked with educators to make Missy's story part of anti-bullying programs across the U.S. Missy's murder has since been retold in documentaries, TV specials, and books, not for sensationalism, but because it highlights something deeply unsettling: how cruelty can grow inside ordinary people, how envy and rumor can twist into hatred. Today, the creek in Colby Canyon looks peaceful again, surrounded by trees, with sunlight filtering through the branches. Hikers walk by unaware of what happened there in 1985. But for those who know the story, it remains a silent memorial, a place where a young life was taken and where innocence turned into tragedy. In the years since, many have called Missy's murder a Valley cautionary tale. It wasn't about gangs or strangers or drugs. It was about something far more familiar: jealousy among friends, pressure to fit in, and the cruelty that can come from insecurity. Missy Avila, was only 17 when her life ended, but her story continues to speak to generations after her, a reminder that betrayal often wears the face of friendship. And somewhere in California, her mother still keeps a framed photo of Missy smiling, the same smile that once lit up their small home in the valley, and a promise that her daughter will never be forgotten.